Maseches Nedarim Daf Chav contains one Mishnah, which divides the daf into two different sugyas. The first half of the daf is discussing the machlokas between Rabba and Rava. What exactly is the machlokas Beis Hillel Mishamai? The Gemara is going to bring one more proof and then try to see who is the author of a brisa. And then we'll get to the Mishnah, which will introduce the topic of Nidrei Einsin, and the Gemara will talk generally about an ones. If somebody ends up fulfilling a condition in a situation that was beyond his control, does it count as if it's fulfilled or not? And bring a proof to that subject from our Mishnah. So let's begin. So we've been discussing for the last daf of machlokas between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai in a situation where somebody makes a neder and part of the neder is canceled. Does that cancel the entire neder? According to Beis Hillel, yes, the entire neder is canceled. According to Beis Shammai, no, whatever is fine was not the canceled part of the neder is still in force. Now the Gemara has had a machlokas between Rabba and Rava where this machlokas exists, and the two cases that are out there are if when he realizes that he made the neder in a way that it applies to something he didn't want it to apply to, what did he say to correct it? Did he say, I never would have made the neder the way I said it before I said everything in this group? I would have said everything except this, meaning he uses the same phraseology of everything and he just adds on an exception. That is a situation which is more likely that the original neder stands and just the exception is accepted. Or is he also talking about a situation in which he changes the language and he says, if I would have known that a certain object is in the group, I never would have said all, I would have said just you and you and you are included in the neder and you are not. So that situation is much more likely that he is not canceling the entire neder has to be taken apart and redone, and the entire thing is canceled altogether because he's literally taking the neder down and saying the neder was written wrongly. Now, the machlokas between Rabba and Rava is as follows. According to Rabba, in the case where he's not changing the language, everybody agrees that the neder is valid. In the case where he changes the language, that's where there's a machlokas. According to Rava, it's the other way around. In the case where he changes the language, that's where there's in the case where he does not change the language, that's where there's a machlokas. In the case where he changes the language, everybody agrees that the original neder is canceled completely and everything else is mutter. So I think Rava wants to bring a proof. Gemara says that Ravina brings a proof against Rava in the case said by Rabbi Nassan, and he says that if somebody makes a vow against a basket of figs, and in those basket of figs was a type of figs called benos shuach. These are white figs that are very high quality. Rishonim asked that sometimes Chazal discuss it as being very low quality. Here they call it very high quality. Either way. So then he says, had I realized that benos shuach were in the basket, I never would have made a neder against the basket. So Gemara says, the fact that he started off saying a neder against the basket, and he ended off saying I never would have made against the basket, and he doesn't say the entire basket, obviously what he's doing is he's saying I would have said one at a time. I would have said only the white figs, only the black figs, only this figs, only that figs, and not the benos shuach. I would have changed the language. So the pashtus of this case is therefore that he's referring to where he's saying he would have changed the language. And the Mishnah says clearly that this case was a machlokas. It says that Rabbi Akiva holds it's bater musasa batakula. Rabbi Akiva holds like Beis Hillel. And the Rabbanan, the Tanakama, held like Beis Shammai. So you see, this is the case in the machlokas. In Pashas, it is that it's referring to where he changes the language. So that's a clear proof to the opinion of Rabba. So Gemara says, no, Rabba will tell you that we're not talking about where he changed the language. We're talking about where he would have said the same language. He didn't say the basket is usher. He would have said the entire basket is usher, except for the following. And therefore, he's keeping the language the same, and that is the case of this machlokas. But in the case where he changes the language, if we know machlokas, everybody would agree that the neder is off. The Gemara now asks, who is the author of the following brisa? And what it's going to say depends on Rabba and Rava's opinion. So the brisa has two cases. The first case is where somebody makes a neder against 5 people at once. If one of them becomes mutter, the reisha of the brisa paskins, they all become mutter. So that's hutra muksasan, hutra kulan. That is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, or the opinion of everybody according to Rava in a case where the language is changed. Now, the second case is where he says chutz me'echad mehem. So there, the Gemara understands that's a case where the language is not changed, where he adds on an exception at the end. The language is not changed. And again, the brisa here paskins that they are all usher, that the language, that the neder stays and it sticks for everyone else. So husu. So says the Gemara, the first case is a case where the language is changed, and the second case is a case where the language is not changed. Now, the first case, where the language is changed, according to Rabbah, where the language is changed, there's a machlokas, and therefore this Mishnah that holds that it's mutter and that it was canceled is Rabbi Akiva's opinion. The Seifa, where it says that the language is not changed, there the Mishnah paskins that everything is usher, that everybody agrees to, according to Rabbah, where the language is not changed, the neder stands. Now, according to Rava, you have to play it out a little bit differently. The first case, where the halacha is that it's mutter because the neder is canceled, there it's in the case where the language changed, that according to Rava, everybody agrees to. And the Seifa, where the language is not changed, according to Rava, that's what there's a machlokas, and the Mishnah paskins that the neder stands, that would only be the Rabbanon, but Rabbi Akiva would disagree and say that the neder is canceled in that case as well. Oh, this is the end of this sugya. Now we get to our next Gemara, which discusses the halacha of nidrei onsen, that if somebody makes an onus, if somebody makes a neder, conditioned on a certain circumstance, and he's prevented from fulfilling the circumstance, so that doesn't count. The fact that he's prevented is not his fault, and therefore it's not held against him. So the Mishnah brings examples. So example number one, the Mishnah says if somebody makes a neder to his friend that if you don't come by a certain time, I'm going to answer all my things from Hana against you, and then that person tried to come, but he got sick, or his son got sick, or the river was flowing and couldn't get across, or the river was just, there was no ship to get across, these are all not his fault, and it's not held against him, and the neder is not considered valid because the condition is not considered filled. He tried to make sure that the neder wasn't going to hit, but he was prevented. Now, they're trying to explain each of these cases is a different chiddush. The first case where he got sick, he was nothing he could do about it. The second case where his son got sick, he could have done something about it. It just was very difficult. In the third case, the only thing stopping him was money. He could have hired a special ship to take him across. Still, that's all considered to be an onus. All right, now the Gemara introduces a separate discussion in a different case, and the Gemara is going to try to see if our Mishnah is a proof to that. So that case is somebody who had papers that prove that he's the owner of a certain land, and he was in a court case against someone, and the court wanted him to bring more proof. The documents were not enough, so he left the documents with them, and he said, I'm going to leave them with you, and I'm going to go get new ones. I'm going to go get the additional proof you wanted. And the Beis Din were apparently afraid that he was going to scam them. He was going to go and not come back for a while and leave things the way they were and leave the whole case hanging. So they made an agreement that he has to come back within 30 days. If he doesn't come back within 30 days, he forfeits the rights. He could take the papers and give it to the litigant against him. Now, he tried to come back within 30 days and he was prevented by an onus. What happens? Do we say that, well, the fact of the matter is he didn't come. If he didn't come, he didn't come. I don't care if there's an onus. The situation is what it is. That's what Rav Huna holds. His zechuyos are all canceled and given to the other individual. According to Rava, though, we say he was an onus. There's nothing he could do about it. An onus doesn't count. It's like it never happened. And therefore, it is considered like he came, and onus rachmana patre, and the condition is not considered to be canceled, and you don't say that he lost his zechusim. So the Gemara wants to bring proof to this concept. And again, the central question here is if somebody's prevented from fulfilling a condition because of an onus, because of circumstances beyond his control, does it count as if you fulfilled the condition or not? So Gemara's first proof is the fact that we say that somebody who's forced into something is not held responsible for it. If a girl is raped, so it says, you don't punish her at all. She didn't do anything wrong. She's not considered to be an adulterous woman. It's not her fault. She was forced. So, says the Gemara, that should prove that it doesn't count for anything. It counts as if she did not a thing. So in our case as well, the fact that he didn't show up doesn't count as anything because he was prevented by circumstances he was forced. So Gemara says maybe that's different because there what's at stake is the death penalty. If she's guilty, she would be liable to the death penalty. And we have a rule, we always look to get out of the death penalty any way we can. So Gemara says, okay, so we'll go to a different proof, and that's a Mishnah that says, that is our Mishnah here, which we just read. Somebody makes a neder, on condition that the guy doesn't come, and he doesn't come because he got sick, his son got sick, or because he was blocked by the river. They're nidre onsin, and they don't count. So you see, the condition counts. The fact that he's an onus makes it that whatever happened, the fact that he didn't show up counts as nothing at all. Now, the Gemara accepts that raya, but the Gemara says I have raya. It's the other way. I have a proof that an onus counts, even though you're prevented by circumstances beyond your control. What you did counts anyway. What's that case? Somebody gives his wife a get and says, this get takes effect now, unless I come within 12 months to cancel it. And then he dies within 12 months, so he never cancels it. So the halacha is that the get counts, and she doesn't fall to yibum. She's a divorcee, not a widow. So the Gemara says, why does it count? There's no greater onus than the fact that he died. So Gemara says, no, because that was his point here. He was trying to get her out of yibum, and what he wanted was that the get should take effect if something happens to prevent him from coming, something like the fact that he died. That was exactly what he was trying to do. So therefore, it's not a proof at all to what you're saying, that if he was trying to come and he couldn't come, that counts. The way the Gemara expresses this is, had he known he was going to die, he would have given her the get right away. That's what the point he was trying to do was. So now the Gemara says we have another proof. If somebody says, if I don't come within 30 days, then this get should be a good get from now. Similar thing, he gave his wife a get. He said, if I don't come to cancel within 30 days, it's chal from now. And then he came, and there was a river in the way, and he couldn't get across, and he was standing on the other side screaming, look, I came, look, I came. So he clearly did not want it to take effect. And Shmuel's psak over there is that it doesn't count as if he came. He could scream only once. He says he came, but he didn't come. And therefore the get takes effect. So the first question is why? According to the Rabbah, he's an einus. So why is it not count as if he came? The says no, that's different, because the fact that he couldn't get across the river is something you should have foreseen. You can't say it was beyond my control. You should have been aware of that and made sure to work it out that you came early enough that you would make the boat, you would get across. So therefore, that's not considered to be valid at all. All right, now the Gemara accepts that. Now the Gemara's question though is according to Rav Huna, you're telling me that the zechusim should be given over to the other one because he accepted upon himself to give it over if I don't come. So the problem is the concept of asmachta. Asmachta is where somebody agrees to something and he doesn't really think it's going to happen. So therefore he never really fully agrees. So the halacha is that asmachta doesn't work, and asmachta is not kaina. He didn't really commit to give it over. So how do we give over this chosam here? This guy thought he was going to come. He was prevented by an onus telling me an onus. Still, it doesn't matter that he was an onus. Still, he didn't come, and the tanai is fulfilled. But still, it's an asmachta, so he never really meant to give over his zechusim. So how does this work? Here it's different. This is not a real asmachta because he gave over the papers. They're in somebody else's hands. Somebody else is holding them. When you give it over, you can't tell me, oh, it's an asmachta. I didn't think it was really going to happen. You actually gave it. It's out of your control. That you can't call an asmachta. So the Gemara says that that's not true. You can give something over to someone else, and it's still called an asmachta. The Mishnah that says that somebody pays part of his chov. He owes money to someone. He pays part of it. Now that guy doesn't want to give him the star back because he still is owed part of the money. And our cases where they're not going to write a receipt, so instead they agree that he's going to give the star to a third person. That person's going to hold it, and he's going to be aware that only part of the money is owed. So the condition that they said was as follows: give a star to the third person. I have 30 days to pay the rest. If we don't pay the rest within 30 days, you should give it back to the lender. And that way he'll be able to collect the whole thing. Anyway, 30 days comes, and he didn't pay the rest. So here the halacha is, Rabbi Yossi said, you give him the star, and Rabbi Yehuda said, you did not give him the star. And Rabbi Nachman said, the name of Rabbi Baravu, the halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi, because an asmachta is kaina. It's not like Rabbi Yossi who holds that an asmachta is kaina. Instead, we say that the asmachta is not kaina. Problem is, here a third person is holding the star. And why should we say that an asmachta is not kaina here? If the third person is holding it, you just told me it doesn't count as an asmachta. So my answer is it's different here, where he just gave him to be mevatel the zechus that he has in the land. Canceling your rights altogether is a lot stricter. It's a lot more severe than just giving over the star to somebody. Give over the star. All right, to give over the star doesn't mean he's going to collect necessarily 100%. Here he's literally saying cancel all my rights. That you can't claim that's an asmachta, because you're literally canceling everything that you have. So therefore, there's no halacha of asmachta here. The Gemara ends off that the halacha is asmachta is kleina as long as it's not based on an onus, and as long as he did a kinyan to make it clear that he's finalizing the transaction and that it was done in an appropriate based in chashav of high level expert.